Welcome to the Lights Out Podcast. This is Chris Lights Out Lytle, and this is our journey to document the history of mixed martial arts. I have brought with me my friend, the MMA detective Mike Davis, and together we will preserve the history and hear some great stories from the world in the era of the no-holds-barred. Thank you and enjoy.
Welcome to the Lights Out Podcast. I am the MMA detective Mike Davis. We are doing a From the Vault episode, some of the early pioneers that you may not have gotten on your radar, but it's the brick and mortar of the regional shows that these guys help support and launch people into the bigger shows. Joey Knockdown Brown. Man, thanks for joining us, brother.
Thank you for having me. Appreciate it, Mike. Thank you.
So Joey, you're actually from the New Jersey, New York, the early scene. Am I correct?
Yes. I was actually born in New York, in the Bronx, and then lived there till 76, and then moved out to Jersey, Bergen County, in 76. Been living in Jersey ever since. Yeah.
So Jersey had quite a few like high-end gyms, same with New York, obviously. Where did you start getting your first real bit of MMA training?
That was MMA training. That was at Eddy Rolon's gym in Rexplex in Elizabeth.
Okay.
Yeah. So that's where I wanted to train there at first. I actually got invited to come down, spar light heavyweight there, and I beat him. And then I was on a team after that. So it was pretty cool.
So it was kind of like one of the rites of passage. You had to fight somebody in the gym in order to get on it.
Yeah.
Any other big name fighters that were in that gym or hanging around the area at that time, so people can kind of get a grasp for your
Eddy Rolon. Eddy Rolon was one. Dante Rivera.
Okay, there's another big one.
That was the light heavyweight. I went against actually. That was a light heavyweight.
Okay. And how much training? Your first fight on record was Jay Russell at Sport Fight, November 9th, 2002.
Yes.
And you win that via referee stoppage. But how much training did you have prior to this bout?
I started training with, overall martial arts experience. I started training in 1990, and then took it more serious in 1992. In January of 92, I started training under Bob Long. Shawn Bob Long. That was Bob Long School of Self-Defense.
Okay, but New Jersey Bob Long or Central Illinois Bob Long?
New Jersey Bob Long.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, it was him and his son. It was Bob Long and his son Brian Long. And Brian was a detective for the New Jersey State Police.
So you're not talking the soldier Brian Long?
No.
That fought several times in Iowa?
No, totally different. It's just the same name, yeah.
All right. So these are really obscure old school names. I'm glad I can at least hang with them, even though I'm completely wrong. So how long have you been training prior to your first mixed martial art bout?
Like I said, since 1990. I've been training since 1990 in the martial arts.
Arm bars, triangles, all of that stuff?
All that stuff came in 2002. That was my introduction into that. Into the sporting aspect of it was 2002. That's when I went to the gym there. I think it was May or June. Well, it might have been either April. Between April and June, I started going there to training with Eddy Rolon.
Eddy Rolon. Okay.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Yeah, and I started training with him, and then that was my introduction to the actual NHB, as they call it, or Vale Tudo, because it wasn't named MMA yet, mixed martial arts. It came soon after.
Will you agree with me when I say that the NHB crowd really disliked the term mixed martial arts? In the beginning,
yeah. Some people like, it was a little, I guess you can say that. I guess it had, it didn't start warming up to people until they, I guess, abbreviated it, MMA. They started calling it that, and then it kind of just it adopted it from there, I guess.
Yeah, it was more like the begrudgingly, like I kind of took it on because they knew it meant there was a rule set and it would be legal rather than being kind
no
of
more
outlaw.
headbutts.
Yeah, no, but right, no more knees on the ground when your opponent's on his back. You can't knee him to the head anymore. Yeah, yeah. Well, your first fight against Jay Russell, was this an NHB bout or an MMA fight?
I think they called it MMA because I think it was like not long after I've been there, then MMA came. The name was changed. Yeah.
So there was no headbutts in that fight?
No headbutts, no.
Really?
No headbutts in that fight. But now I'm training to fight Jay Russell, right? And then I guess the promoter, Brian Cimins, brought a DVD in and it had, it's got, Jay Russell on here. I'm like, what? And it was, I think it was International Fighting Championship, and it was some on an Indian reservation in New York.
Okay.
And he fought a guy on there for the lightweight title, but he had another fight in the IFC too that he was disqualified for, I think, for headbutts. So he was headbutting the guy and he got disqualified. So yeah, and I'm like, I'm fighting this guy. You're putting me in with this guy. This guy seems like a ringer, but at the time I didn't care. They're like, oh, you'll beat him anyway, you'll knock him out or whatever, So
you're talking about Brian Cimins from Grapplers Quest fame?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, just so people at home can kind of follow along, Brian Cimins, a big pioneer in the grappling industry.
Yes.
And, between his MMA organization, Sport Fight, which was nowhere near as big as his grappling organization.
Right. Yeah. That was
Grapplers Quest.
Event, actually. Yeah. That was his first event.
Right. Yeah. Grapplers Quest really made a name for themselves. Fantastic DVD releases, real good pool of people as well, that participated in his tournaments. Somebody that kind of gets overlooked in mixed martial arts that I think, maybe should be talked about a little bit more.
Yeah.
So,
sure.
So Jay Russell, you end that fight with your hand being raised. Is it at that point you knew mixed martial arts was going to be a huge part of your life?
Yeah. 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 From that point on, I knew this is, I saw myself winning, like before, like I knew I was going to win. It was weird. But even as a kid, I saw myself like hands being raised and stuff like that. So it was always like a dream. So I was kind of like living the dream and watching it come to fruition. So it was really an awesome moment. And I think they had ESPN was doing a documentary on Ultimate Fighting. So they were there. So that just confirmed it. And they showed the highlight reel of it, of the fight, a few highlights of the fights of that night.
Right.
One of them. So I was blessed to be on that. So that was cool. Yeah, that was really cool.
But you really kind of, you were older in age when you first started.
Yeah, I never had a prime. I never had a prime.
No. And like, they kind of, I'm not going to say the funny thing, but the unique thing was like, sometimes like we look at somebody's record and we say, either he had a really brave manager, the worst thing you could have as a fighter. He was self-managed and, we're like, screw that. I'll fight anybody, with the promoter kind of egging him on. Or they're a little bit older and they know they got to kind of throw caution to the wind and take hard fights because your record is littered with really, really hard fights.
Yeah, and that was the latter one that you mentioned. It was that one because I knew I had a small window of opportunity. So I knew that. So I knew I had to do something fast, and I had to do it. I had to fight somebody with a name. So, because I've thought of myself like that. That's how my dad was when he was younger, and he taught us all. You go out there and get the world by the balls, basically. He would say, I'm not saying I'm the baddest, but the baddest don't mess with me,
And worst case scenario, hey, man, you can at least look at yourself in the mirror and say, I gave it an honest shot. Right?
I gave it a go. I gave it a go to my best ability at the time. And it was way past my prime, But, I'll tell you, the Liguori fight took a lot out of me.
Well, check this out. So let me set this up. This is freaking crazy. So his second fight is April 12th, 2003, Bama fights. Chris Liguori, future UFC vet.
Yeah.
Chris Liguori comes in at 178 pounds, and you weigh 155.
I was actually 159 exactly for that. And I cut weight I actually cut weight that same day because it was labeled amateur because they didn't pay us for that fight. But it was, my original opponent, which happened to me a few times, a couple of people backed out. I ain't fighting that guy, for whatever reason. They backed out of fighting me, and his teammate was supposed to be there, a 155er or 160 pounder. It was like in that range, and they never showed or whatever. And then so they put me with him. But I must say this, it seemed like everybody knew I was fighting him but me. It was like one of those, at the time. That's what it felt like.
And was he a pretty big ticket seller? Was there a big pop when he walked up to the ring?
For
him?
I think for both of us, kind of possibly maybe for him. I didn't know like how much was there. It was a South Plainfield, like middle school or high school. It was like one of those. So it was in there. It was in a gymnasium. And I remember my nephews helping me cut weight, and my son, I'm like over there, like, they all wrestled, So I remember cutting weight, and I was like already depleted, you know what I mean? And then going in there and fighting this guy. And it was a fight. I was fighting like for my life. That was a fight for my life,
Liguori, absolute stud of a fighter.
Tough guy. Yeah,
couple weight classes above you in regards to where he fought in the UFC,
like a 20-pound weight advantage. Like going against a middleweight, basically.
Yeah, and at this time too, that's kind of like sometimes that's how people match made. They oftentimes gave you a name, but once you showed up, that it wasn't necessarily who you were fighting.
Yeah, we got tons of accolades for that fight. I had people approach me after the fight, and it was like a win, even though, it wasn't like I didn't tap, he didn't KO me. It wasn't, the doctor stopped it based on a cut above my eye, from an elbow.
Right.
But, which happened earlier in the fight, the elbow, but I just kept fighting. And then, it got to the point where, we were like just fighting. He had a broken finger, I think, and I had like a cut on my eye. And they both gave us, they gave us both medals and standing ovation. A crowd went absolutely. They were in a frenzy, man. Just like the write-up says, they were crazy. It was great.
I read that. Yeah, I read that. It was interesting. And to Liguori's credit, he continued. And he did really good things in his career as well. It's kind of. Nice having something like that on your record. A guy that you could say, "Hey, I fought him."
Yeah, he's a cool guy. Cool guy. Definitely was definitely one of the, along with my first victory. That was like, that was a good one, good experience. Did at the time, I didn't think so. At the time, when it was like right when I was going with him, because I felt like, what the heck? I was supposed to, I cut weight the same day. So I was already starting from a disadvantage. But after it was over and after, everything from it, all the respect and the accolades from it, it was like, okay, this is how it was supposed to be this way, I guess.
And at least people recognized it as well. It's one thing when you do all of that, or those are the circumstances, and you push through anyway, and nobody knows it. It's another thing when it's acknowledged, including from Liguori. Liguori definitely acknowledged it as well.
Yeah.
Which is pretty cool.
Yeah, it was awesome. Yeah.
You actually tried out in 2004 in August for the K1 tryouts.
Yes. Yeah.
And what was that experience like?
Yeah, I was one of 70 selected. I remember getting the email. I was excited. I flew out to the Bellagio Hotel in Vegas. And they had a spar first, and I sparred this one guy, and I destroyed him. I was like, boom, 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 boom. They were impressed with that. And then I guess they put me with this guy named KJ Nunes.
Oh God.
Yeah, KJ Nunes. I didn't know who he was at the time. I just knew he was a tough kid, and he was beating his guys, and so the Japanese guys over there, K1, they're talking, and all of a sudden they put me against him. And then we were going toe to toe at each other. Boom, 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 He drops me to a knee. I get up, I go at him again. We're fighting again, going back and forth. And then, they finally broke it up because it was, we were just going crazy. And yeah, man, he definitely got the better of me in that. I give that to him, And if that was not him, it was a clone of him. It looked just like him, and I didn't realize that until I seen him later on. I think he was in Strike Force where he was fighting somebody. I was like, hey, that foot, that dude K1 tryouts,
Yeah.
Oh yeah. So it was like that. So it was, he was good. He was good.
You met Marcus Davis out there as well.
Yeah, and Joe Caballero. But I actually met Joe Caballero before that. Pat Miletich actually linked me up with Joe, gave me his numbers, contact information, because I went out to Pat in the summer of 2003. And they were helping me prepare for one of my fights that eventually got squashed. But anyway, I went out there to get in shape for the fight. So, and that was a great experience that I'll never forget. Pat was a great guy. Yeah.
Were you part of any of those legendary Miletich fighting systems, training sessions or sparring sessions, I should say?
Yeah. I went against, I sparred against Jens Pulver. Jens Pulver came in, and it was me and I think Brian Bressler.
Brian Bressler, yeah. Current referee.
I think there's two Brian Bresslers, though. The one that I'm talking about kind of looks like BJ Penn a little bit. I actually have him in a picture, one of the pictures I sent you when all of us are against the wall, and he's like the last guy to the right. That's Brian. He's a tough kid.
Well, Brian Bressler is currently a referee in the state of Iowa.
Okay.
Yeah, he's a guy that never quit the sport, always stayed with it.
Tough guy.
Yeah, restaurant manager, managed maybe a couple strip clubs. And
yes.
I know who he is.
Yeah. So it was him and we were like going round robin, which Jens would stay in. He would go in and spar him. Then I would go in, and this is like the stuff that I need, like the stamina, you know what I mean? I'm in great shape when I'm there. I think I was maybe 158 to 162.
That's an easy cut to 55. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. I was like in tip top shape. And like I said, their training sessions were second to none, And so I got to spar Jens, which I was like, wow, I mean, to all respect to Jens, I was like, this is good. I'm doing okay, for the level that he's doing. He's like, don't kick. I remember him saying this, no kicks to the legs. I said, yeah, no problem. That we just did boxing. So I just boxed him, and I just remember like, he's a lot easier to hit than my instructor, Shihan Brian Long. Brian Long is like, you're hitting air and then bang, you're eating like one or two shots. But anyway, but he was definitely his angles of movement. Okay. He stayed in the pocket. And then if he made you miss, like when you missed, he made you pay with like a hook to the body or hook to the head. So he was like really, really good. His form was impeccable. Jens Pulver. So, but yeah, I did good against him. I held my own, I felt. And Brian as well. Brian's a tough kid. Brian would go in there with him. And then, but the ultimate test, I think, was when I was sparring their national champion, Marshall Blevins. Tough kid, man. I went against him and just sparring, we're just sparring. And I think I was like, I had the weight advantage, which is like a first time. I think, we're gearing up and everything. And he was like maybe 145. So I had about like 10, 15 pounds on him, whatever, and we're just sparring. And I got the better of him, I felt, and I think Pat thought that too, because Pat goes, go again with him. Go again. I'm like, okay, we won again. And then, he wound up getting the better of me. I was like gassed, but that's why I was there, get my stamina better. So, but yeah, but it was a good experience. We were just going toe to toe. We became good buddies after that. You know what I mean?
And I think like a lot of the difference between training then and training now is you've got fighters in the UFC that will not spar with you if they don't know who you are. Like they have to actually know their sparring partners to where if you went to MFS, it's your first day there, you just signed up. The likelihood of you getting socked up by somebody with a UFC belt around their waist was probably pretty high.
Yeah. Yeah. Crazy.
Yeah, for sure. So after that, like, I think this is like when you switched and started training. Was it with Renzo Gracie at this time?
Yeah, I started I started training there with Renzo. I went there, I think it was April of 2004. And that was basically to get my ground game better. You know, I needed to get my ground game better. Just needed to do that, you know. I was good at escapes. That was I had a strong point. I mean, I was gifted athletically. You know, someone get me to move, I'm like rubber elbows, you know. I mean, even at the dojo, they used to tell me, he's like rubber elbows. They used to use me as a uki all the time for demonstrations, you know. And but with the submission stuff, with the Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, I was pretty good at, I had some athletic ability, you know, unless the guy was like real tight with his game, then, you know, I'm being submitted, you know. And Eddy was different. Eddy Rolon, I could just go back just a minute. I remember Eddy Rolon, the first time I sparred him, I remember because he was more like a catch wrestler. He was different.
So it's
like,
the Japanese style.
Yeah, he was more like weird. Like he would just do things like grab your wrist. Like he'd grab both my wrists, right? And I would eventually just get fatigued just trying to get out, you know? And I'm trying to do my wrist releases, you know what I mean? And sometimes I'd get him out, but he'd grab it again. I'd get out, he'd grab it again. And it was just like that. And eventually I'd just get tired. And the next thing you know, he's turning me into this like twister pretzel, you know?
Mm-hmm.
But yeah.
When you were with Renzo, was Matt Serra and Nick Serra there at the time? Ricardo Almeida?
A few times. Ricardo Almeida was there. Like I see him sparring. He was sparring a lot, you know, and we would jump in there too with him, you know, like a few times. It was him. I think it was the Angry Snowman guy. What's his name? Sparred him. He was when I first got there. I was like working with those kind of guys. They were trying to help me out. So I was sparring with a couple of guys.
The only snowman that I can think of is Jeff Monson, but I don't think he ever trained up there.
This guy was he was a tough kid. Liguori fought him a while back. I'm trying to remember his name. Oh man.
Oh, that's okay. So you get your submission game on point, and at the last minute, Stephen Patry calls you. September 25th, 2004, you fight Jonathan Goulet in TKO.
Yeah. That one. Well, what happened was, I called up Sven Bean, and he was he was the guy holding the pads for me at the K1 tryouts. He was also the K1 fight coordinator, and I was telling him, like, hey, I never heard from K1. What's up? I know I wasn't the best guy there, but I was at least
you're in there.
Top three.
You're in the mix.
I was in the top three. I was like at least like second or third guy that they were like interested in, you know. And then he goes, well, they should have got back to you because, you know, I was impressed. He said, he goes, well, listen, if they don't, he's like, I can give you a shot on my show, Ring of Fire, you know. And then all of a sudden he called me back, and then he said, hey, 4 people backed out of fighting Jonathan Goulet. He's a welterweight, but it's in Canada. It's a show called TKO. You know, you beat that guy, you know, that'll be big. If you beat that guy, you know. I looked at it as I got nothing to lose. I'm supposed to lose because I'm going up in weight, right? And
it's last minute. Right.
Last minute. It's like a 2-week. It was a 2-week notice. So I got in. That was my path to get in. So ultimately it was Pat Miletich, the connection, right, to Joe Cavaliero to K1, K1 to Sven Bean to Stephen Patry TKO. That was the lineage of all that, how that went through, how I was able to get in there. Because you had people like, you know, like, how'd you get that fight? How'd you get in there? They think I have this crazy manager. Really, I was the manager. I was the manager, but I had a girl working for me. Her name was Suzanne Flanagan, and she became my assistant manager because she was really good with, talking on the phone. She was very classy,
A woman's touch in the fight game.
Yeah, she was great.
You can't beat it. You can't beat a woman's touch.
Everybody loved her. They all loved her. She was great. I'm still friends with her to this day. She's awesome. Her and her daughter Rachel.
Yeah, her daughter Rachel was special needs. That was somebody that you dedicated quite a few of your fights to.
Yeah. They're just awesome, and nothing but great things to say about them. But yeah, she became the manager one time. It just happened kind of like by default. She asked me, who would you like to train under if you had an opportunity? Give me the list of two names, and I gave her Pat and Paul Rutten. And the next thing you know, I'm training with both those guys. So that cool. Was really good. Yeah,
super cool.
Yeah,
so you also did the Pride tryout in Los Angeles. What was that experience like?
I got accepted to that, but the last minute there's like a family emergency, so I didn't take the flight to go out there. So that's what happened with that. But yeah.
Okay.
And I heard, what's his name went to that too, I think, right? KJ Noons, I think.
Yeah.
He went out there.
Yeah. He was out there as well. When you flew out to TKO, I mean, you did him a solid on the first one. They made good on their word about bringing you back. Yeah. And well, first and foremost, Jonathan Goulet, future UFC veteran.
Not long after, too.
No.
Not too long. Same thing with Chris Liguori. Like a couple of months down the road, he was in the UFC. Sam Stout, the next year, he was in the UFC.
That's your next opponent, Sam Stout, right there.
Yeah.
Sam Stout. Do you remember interacting at all with Shawn Tompkins, which would be his coach?
Yes. Yeah. He was a cool guy, man. I liked him. He was a good guy. I just remember hearing, like, walking by him, talking, like, hey, what's up? I was just talking to him. And I remember my first meeting with them I was cutting weight, and I'm in a sauna at this gym in the hotel I'm staying. So I'm cutting weight, and all of a sudden, he opens the door. He's like, hey, is it cool if we can cut weight in here with you? I'm like, yeah, no problem. So, so them guys came in, and I was cutting weight with them, just talking to them, Yeah,
it is what it is. It's the fight game, man. You're going to be sitting next to a guy that you're about to fight a little later on. It is what it is.
Then another time, I remember walking, and I hear what sound like a drum roll. I mean, right? I look, it's Mark Hominick hitting the pads. Showing Tompkins all the pads. I was like, it's like a drum roll. Man, he was quick, that kid. Tompkins was, Hominick was amazing. Fast. Yeah.
Well, at that fight, it's I'm glad you brought up Hominick. He actually fought Shane Rice that night.
Yes.
And Shane Rice's, there was almost a fight backstage between Tompkins and Shane Rice. Do you remember why?
Yeah, I do remember why. And Shane Rice was right. Okay. Both him and Sam Stout. Now, listen, normally I'm not going to say that because I'm not, look, even if he was lubed up and it was a stand-up fight, Sam probably would have beat me. I was way past my prime. I was swinging for the fence. I knew that going in there. He was the #1 lightweight in Canada. So I'm not making any excuses by saying this, but let me tell you something. He was lubed up in baby oil. Okay? He was 100% lubed up in baby oil. You can smell it. Okay? I remember like slipping off him,
Okay.
Because he knew he was fighting a Henzo guy. You know what I'm saying? He knew he was fighting a Henzo guy. And they had, I think, Pat Curran in their corner,
Jeff Curran.
Yeah, Jeff Curran. That's right. Jeff Curran. Uh-huh. Yeah, Jeff Curran in the corner. So, but, so yeah, I remember that. And back then I didn't really say anything. I didn't make a big deal about it. I didn't say anything. But once I heard that I was a gimme fight, that kind of pissed me off. So, you know what I mean? I'm like, well, if I was such a gimme fight, I was so easy, then why'd you need to lube up? I'm just saying, But anyway, that's whatever. I didn't want to.
Did you have that? So did you have that conversation with them as well?
I didn't have that conversation with them as well. No, I didn't.
Yeah, I know Shane kind of confronted them in regards to it, and it was
Shane confronted them. I said something about it, and I said something to Shane about it, but I didn't pursue it any further. It wasn't nothing against Shane. Was a cool guy. he was one of the guys I was talking to, you know, when I was there. But yeah, nah, it was nothing. You know, I didn't make a big deal about it. I didn't go that route. You know, I just didn't go that route.
You trained with Phil Nurse as well. Am I correct?
Yeah, well, that was with Jamie Crowder. Jamie Crowder was a student, I guess, a disciple of him or a student of him, and he was the trainer for Renzo Gracie. You know, and then I think he brought in Joe Samperi. Joe Samperi was basically Jamie's instructor under Phil Nurse. And Joe's an accomplished fighter in his own right. So is Jamie, rather. Jamie's like a national champion Muay Thai. I think Joe is as well. You know, both those guys are, you know, good on their own right. They're tough. But yeah, Phil Nurse, but I never had any like I would see him, he'd say, "Hi, Phil Nurse," but I never they would come in, show pointers, but he never taught a class. It was always Joe teaching a class when I was at the Watt. It would go there after Renzo's. That's what I would do on Saturday. Sometimes I'd have my kids with me. I'd take my kid, or I'd take them to Renzo's with me, you know, stuff like that. But sometimes I would just go right from Renzo's to, I guess it was in Chinatown. They had the Watt was down that way. And me, Jamie, and, you know, Joe would take a train down there, and then we'd gear up and just do hard conditioning, hard sparring. And yeah, those guys brought my striking, the Muay Thai aspect of my striking to you know, new heights. You know,
right.
Yeah.
At that point, you moved on to did you ever fight for Lou Neglia at all? I know he was a bigger promoter out that way. I was supposed to fight
for him at least 2 different times. One was for a middleweight belt. I guess Danny
Suarez? Was it Danny Suarez? Okay.
Yes. Yeah. And that was they advertised it. Everything was there. Other than the actual, just waiting on the contract. Right when it came to contract signing, you know, it was a no-go. And then I wind up speaking to Danny's coach, and he goes, "Hey, he don't want no part of you." You know, I don't care saying that because it was true. That's what he said. That's what his coach told me. You know, his coach was
like a financial thing for you, or what was it?
No. For me, I was all good with the fight. I wanted to do it, but Danny's coach said that he didn't want no part of me. He didn't want to fight me.
Okay.
So he went to, I think he fought in King of the Cage.
Okay.
You know, it would have been an interesting fight. You know, he was a tough kid in his own right as well. He was tough. It was a good matchup. I thought it would be actually a good fight. You know what I mean? But yeah, his trainer said that he didn't want to fight me. So I'm like, whatever. But
well, I obviously also your first. Well, it's not your first international experience with regards to combat because you had fought in Canada, but Hiroyuki Abe also. I was actually at that fight.
Oh, you were there?
Yes, I was.
The most brutal, you know, when people say you go into shock, you don't feel pain. Well, yeah, I felt everything he was doing to my leg, every little bit. You know, I mean, I thought he was going to stand and trade with me. I remember we were circling. I remember Jamie telling me, you know, because Jamie was meticulous, and so was Edgar, the boxing coach, meticulous with footwork, move around, and I got my footwork increased. You know, because self-defense is different. You know what I mean? Like self-defense is different than sport fighting, you know? So anyway, I'm circling around the ring, I remember. And we came in, and then I threw a punch. He threw a punch at the same time, I think. Ed connected a little bit with him as he was going for his roll. He did this move, and he had my kind of inverted heel hook on me. And right from the time he touched my leg, I felt my leg cracking. I mean, crack. My head was by the ropes. I tried to scoot out. I was hoping for the ref to stand us back up, you know. And he said, "I have move," and they put us right in the middle of the ring, and you know, they let him get the move on, and then you know they Hajime begin.
Yeah, that's real difficult to start with. You might as well just tap right then and there, otherwise you're in trouble.
It was, yeah, I tried to survive. I survived as long as I could. I can hear my brother screaming my name. Joey, hit him, punch him in his face. Everybody screaming. I was like punching him. I hear my coach, hit him. I'm like, boom, trying to get out. And then once he like went back, he got a better bite of it, man. And then, oh man, the pain was excruciating. Oh man.
Yeah, they got you in a heel hook. You also had I think you also had a hairline fracture.
Yeah, it was a hairline fracture. Yeah. You did you do your homework?
Yeah.
And had a
I was there. I mean,
SPL
truth
spring.
it's kind of easier for me if I'm there.
Yeah.
You had Jamie Crowder. We had mentioned his name earlier. He's actually Renzo's current Muay Thai coach. Was it Chris Sedlak and Darren Antola? Those are your corners, man.
Yeah. Chris Sedlak was the wrestling coach, actually.
Yeah.
He went to school with my nephews. So that's how I got hooked up with him, because he was a good, solid wrestling he had. And he was just helping me with that. And and Jamie. Yep.
You missed those days?
At the fight? You were just at that fight, or were you?
Yeah, I was working. Yeah, I was working for Euphoria at the time.
Nice.
Yeah. I got those MFC Euphoria cards. I probably had about 80% of them. And then when it went to Bodog, I started working over there as well.
Nice.
Yeah. So I've had a lot of those Bodog fights, those early Bodog fights.
Yeah.
You missed it at all?
Just the competing and all that?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, of course. Yeah, of course. There's always that, the mind, you're always like, oh, maybe if I can like do this one more time, I'm in good shape. But, it's like, I'm 56 years old. So, it's funny. Fighters, that's what we think of that sometimes. Someone has to tell us no.
It's the fight game tells you when it's no, and it doesn't mean you always want to listen. That's for sure.
Yeah. Or to practice training. Guys, normally you'd beat, you know what I mean, in practice. And then all of a sudden it's like they're getting better. They're becoming, pro fighters themselves. And some of them are already pro fighters. And, you got to eat a couple of shots to get your one in. And then that's when the realization was for me. I'm like, okay, it's time to hang them up. You know what I mean?
That's cool.
Yeah.
That's cool.
Yeah.
But
I lived a dream.
Well, I mean, you've traveled all over. I mean, in Atlantic City at this point, outside of Las Vegas, Atlantic City at this point, it was more like, I mean, when the UFC wasn't there, it was more like the rivals of the UFC. And there was some phenomenal matchmaking taking place in Atlantic City. No doubt. Yeah, those East Coast cats. Yeah. You also started a gym called Endgame.
Well, that was no, that wasn't my gym. That was actually Eddy Rolon's gym.
Okay.
That was the name of his team. Yeah, that was the name of it before I got there. And well, I guess he had the first fight, I guess, was on sports fighting. So he had a team, and that was us. That was like me, Dante, and a couple other guys, I think. But yeah, that was the name of it. Team Endgame. Yeah.
Right. Fernando Bernardo. Fernando Bernardino. Yes. Yeah. Fernando Bernardino. You're finally turning a corner. You're fighting off a rear naked choke for 2 rounds.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah.
You should have got your hand raised, and the referee takes a point from you.
Yeah.
That sucked. Yeah. That was hard to watch.
Yeah, it was rough. That was rough. Definitely. But he was a tough kid, but
100%.
He was like more tired than me after the fight. Like even like during that that third round, and he was like holding on to the fence, and I'm grabbing him, and he's holding on to the fence, and the referee kept coming over and like pulling his fingers off the fence like this. I mean, you can actually see it in the video. But that was cool. That was a tough fight. I got him with those elbows. I think that was the first round when I was doing that with the elbows. Yeah.
You had Jon Jones, and a real young Jon Jones was on that card. Do you remember him?
Yeah. He came up to me after my fight. He was like, "Yeah." Eddie Alvarez came up to me as I was walking out of the cage, and that was memorable for me. Along, of course, with my teammates. I think it was the Miller brothers and Jamie Cruz, my jiu-jitsu coach, great guy. Mike Constantino, Mike. I cannot say enough good things about Mike Constantino. Great guy, man. He's just a great guy. Yeah, man. All those guys looked out for you, over there.
Yeah.
And Jon Jones, I was walking in the back and getting to where we were, where we were stationed over there. And he was like, "Oh, Knockdown, man, that was amazing." So hearing that from him, and then he becomes a legend in his own right, Jones.
That East Coast scene, I mean, Kurt Pellegrino is over there at that point. Frankie Edgar is sticking his nose around things. Eddie Alvarez, you'd mentioned him. Jon Jones.
Eddie Alvarez was like the poster boy for all those MFC events.
Yeah,
he was definitely head and shoulders above everybody else, man. At KP, the same thing. Kurt Pellegrino, that's another guy that was like could do it all. He could box, he could wrestle.
State champion wrestler, All American.
Yeah, amazing. Yeah. He made it look easy. I remember he
black
fought
belt.
this.
Yeah,
he's an amazing fighter, man. Those guys.
Black belt under Hermes Franca, I think is who we got it under.
Yeah.
It was Hermes Franca's first black belt.
Yeah, that kid was something else too. That kid was a tough kid. I don't know what happened to him, but he was like he just fell off the world.
I think he's a gym owner.
Oh, is he?
Yeah. He's doing all right. When you got that high level wrestling, the UFC pedigree, you can open up a gym and people are going to come sign up.
Hermes Franca, because that's what I was talking about.
Oh, you're talking about Hermes Franca? He's in Brazil. Dude, you know what, man?
Yeah.
Here's the thing about Hermes. That guy was top 3 in the world in his weight class at one point. If you listen to our Spencer Fisher interview, he'll say the last time Spencer walked a straight line was the Hermes Franca fight, because that fight permanently changed him. And guy went to jail for having a relationship with an underage student. He fled, got brought back, did his time. He's a gym owner in Brazil right now, is what Hermes is. I attempted to get him on. I wasn't going to sugarcoat anything, but also I wasn't going to ignore his career, which is pretty spectacular. And it was
like power. Like I was like, this guy, when you're training, as you know, you train, you watch fights, you can see this guy has something, Like I remember Sarah too, not Sarah. When Sarah hit, I remember he hit. He was fighting. Who was he fighting? The guy, Gokarchevichian's student. You know who I'm talking about?
Yeah, you're talking about Parisian.
He fought Parisian, and Matt Sarah hit him right, and like dropped him. He didn't knock him out, but like he dropped him for that second, and I was like, man, he's got a lot of power. And so when he was standing up with George St. Pierre that time, I was like, and when he knocked him out, I was like, that was like one of the best fights ever, man. I was like, that was an amazing fight. But he had that power, And I remember Jamie telling me about it, my trainer, Jamie Crowder. He said that he was taking some guys over there to Sarah's gym and helping them prepare for that. He goes, nobody would have been surprised if they saw the way he was going through the people when he was fighting, sparring. He's like, nobody surprised, man.
I mean, for the newer generation of people, if I had to describe Hermes' style, it's exactly like Gilbert Burns. When he's tired, he's his most dangerous and throwing his hardest. So I was going to try to have him on. Several people told me no. I also had that I shouldn't do it. I also had the Grim Brett Rogers lined up. Dude, his stories. He's living in a tent right now in Minneapolis.
Oh, and who is this now?
Brett Rogers.
Oh, man.
I tracked him down. He's the one that fought Fedor. Like his independent grind is just tomato can after tomato can that they're pulling out of the audience. But like when you look at his body of work, at the higher levels, it's legit. But it's another guy who went to jail for sexual assault.
Crazy.
Hanging out in subway bathrooms, and you're going to take a leak, and now you got Brett Rogers behind you, breathing heavy on your neck.
That's sick. Oh God, no.
So I had him, we were going to go, live from Starbucks, where he can get Wi-Fi, but people kept telling me no on that one as well. So
Yeah.
is what it is.
Yeah.
So Joey, you had I'm not going to say a short stint, you had a meaningful stint in mixed martial arts because, the guys that we had mentioned, the Abe, the Stouts, the Goulet, Liguori, Liguori, I should say. There's no way that they can't get to where they're at without guys like you. Like there's locker rooms full of tough guys refusing 80% of the opportunities presented to them. And I'm thinking you're a guy that very rarely, if ever, said no.
Yeah, true. Yeah. I was just living a dream. I knew, like I said, I knew my window of opportunity was short. So I'm just going to swing for the fence, going to go out there and said, they're going to know who I am. I'm just going to go out and just do it.
Well, and afterward, you shook their hand. I had
skills too. Let me just say that I had skills too. It wasn't just like, like some guy who had courage. I faced my fear. My fear was always conflict. I was like a very introverted kid when I was growing up. My two brothers, I had an older brother that was like, was feared. He was hardest hitter 2 years in a row in football. And he would come home and he would be like the quasi bully to my younger brother and I. My younger brother became like a leader of a gang back in the day, And so he was tough in his own right too. I mean, even though everything he learned from me, I was just naturally gifted at athletics and I had fast hands at the time, yeah, it's, I just believe that, hey, he's a man, I'm a man, anyone can be beaten on any given day. And that's, my father always instilled in us, like just go out there, you got the world by the balls basically, and just go out there and get it, and he was always positive, be all you can be, and you can do anything, just live your dream, whatever it is you love to do that thing, and make a name.
And like I said, as a promoter, a former promoter, you've got a locker room full of people just with every which way and reason to say no. You saved more fights and cards than anybody else. So that locker room, in essence, man, it's called locker room respect. There's guys right now fighting in the UFC, and it's more than one. Their first punch ever having them taken is in the UFC because of how padded their records are. And it used to be every once in a while back in the day. There's probably about 4 or 5 guys that fall into that category right now. And, they don't have that respect in the locker room to where you did. That's it.
Amen, brother.
That's it.
Thank you for that.
That's the truth. It's the truth.
Yeah,
it's the truth. Joey Knockdown Brown, why don't you let everybody know what you're doing right now, just in case anybody at home has any questions.
All right. I have my own business, soap business, all natural soap. Smell like a winner with the soap champion. So that's it. The soap champion. Okay. Also, I have a YouTube channel. It's called JMB, Joseph Michael Brown. It's JMB Reading to You. I'm reading through the Psalms. I actually just finished all 150 Psalms of the King James Version of the Bible. Don't have time to read? Let me read to you. They can go on YouTube and go to my YouTube channel there. Right now I'm in the process of, I think I'm going on chapter 8 or 9 of John, Gospel of John, doing that. Good. And also I did Christian art. I did that. They can just look on the website, just type my name and they can see some Christian art, on Facebook or whatever. I've done that. Also, I just like to give all the glory to my Lord and Savior, Jesus Christ. Without him, I'm nothing, man. He saved me. So I'm just trying to live for him, as best as I can,
Good. Are you sober now?
Pray they know him. What?
Are you sober?
Yeah. I'm sober. I got over 30 something years clean. I got like 33 years or something, like 34 years.
Good for you. Yeah, I'm coming up on 30. Yeah, and I haven't had a legal sip alcohol.
Congratulations. That's huge, brother. That's huge.
Yeah. I quit when I was 18. So Joey, you're an absolute gentleman from other promoters that are not on here, I am saying thank you for saving their card. Their ticket sellers, had fights on the other side of the ring, and it allowed them to continue to move forward. So, Joey, thank you so much, brother. I appreciate it, man.
Michael, thank you so much, man. You're the man, bro. Thank you so
All
much.
right. And dude, what made this easier for me? You follow the podcast, you leave your comments. Greatly appreciated. And when guys like you are listening to what it is that we're putting out, it tells me we're doing the right thing. So,
Dude,
Joey,
you are, man. I love the show, man. I love it, bro.
Good.
Thank you.
Thanks, Joey. Do your thing, buddy. Be good.
God bless.
Check out the full interview on iTunes, Spotify, and all major podcast platforms.